He ran. New city, new face, new version of his life. And from the outside, he looked free. But here's what the outside never shows you. Freedom isn't what he found. He found rooms full of people that still felt empty. He found silence at 3 a.m. that had her name written all over it. He found distractions that worked for exactly 5 minutes. Because you cannot run from your own soul, and that's exactly what she is. The harder he runs from this connection, the more it tears him open, not slowly, violently. And what the divine masculine does inside that darkness, what it does to him, most people never stay long enough in the truth to see it. But you're about to. He thought distance would save him, one step at a time, one city at a time, one broken promise at a time. But the strange thing about running from pain is this. The faster he moves, the tighter the silence wraps around him. Because this was never just about leaving her behind. It was about escaping the version of himself she had already seen. And that version keeps following. In every empty room, in every unread message, in every night that feels too long. He tells himself he is free now. No questions, no tears, no one waiting. But freedom should feel lighter. This feels heavier. Like every mile he runs is not opening a door, it is closing one. And slowly, without warning, the prison gets smaller. Not made of walls, made of memory, made of regret, made of everything he never said. That is the trap. You can outrun a place, you can outrun a person, but you cannot outrun the truth waiting inside you. And when silence finally catches up, it does not ask for an apology, it asks for surrender. Nobody talks about the people who come after her, because that's where the real haunting begins. He meets someone new, she laughs differently, texts differently, loves differently. And for a moment, he convinces himself, this is it. A fresh start, a clean page, a chance to finally forget. But then it happens. A song, a silence, a look in someone's eyes, and suddenly he's not standing in the present anymore. He's back there. Because the cruelest part of losing a soul-level connection isn't separation, it's comparison. Every person after her becomes a mirror that reflects what once felt like home. Not because they aren't enough, but because some connections don't leave quietly. They echo. The divine masculine rarely speaks about this. The dates that feel empty, the conversations that somehow lack color, the strange feeling of sitting beside someone while emotionally standing next to someone else. And that is the haunting no one warns him about. He isn't chasing her anymore. He's chasing a feeling he only experienced with her. A feeling that no replacement can recreate. Because some people leave your life, but never leave your nervous system. And one day he realizes something terrifying. The ghosts were never the people he met after her. The ghost was the version of himself that existed when she was there. The scariest fires are the ones nobody can see. He smiles more now. At least that's what everyone thinks. Photos get posted, goals get chased, life keeps moving. And to the world, he looks free. Free from the past, free from the connection, free from the person who once lived inside every corner of his heart. But there is a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It smolders, quietly, patiently, from the inside out. Because freedom isn't the absence of chains, it's the presence of peace, and peace is the one thing he still cannot find. At night, when the noise fades, the truth returns, not in words, in feelings, the ones he buried under distractions, under work, under pride, under the endless performance of being fine. The divine masculine often wears strength like armor, but armor has a cost. The longer it's worn, the heavier it becomes. So he tells the world he's healed. He tells his friends he's moved on. He even tells himself the same story. Yet his soul knows better. Because the soul doesn't speak the language of denial. It speaks through restlessness, through longing, through the ache that appears for no reason at all. And eventually he learns, you can convince the world you've escaped the fire, but if your truth remains buried, the flames never stop burning. They simply learn to burn in silence. He got everything he once prayed for, so why does it feel like he lost everything? The new city is bigger, the money is better, the opportunities finally arrived. New faces shake his hand, new names fill his phone. A whole new life stands in front of him. And yet, something feels strangely quiet. Not peaceful, empty. Because nobody tells you this. Sometimes success arrives carrying flowers to a funeral you never attended. He thought reaching this version of life would feel different, more alive, more complete. Instead, every achievement echoes in rooms that feel unfamiliar. The laughter sounds distant. The victories fade too quickly. Even surrounded by people, he feels like a stranger at his own celebration. The divine masculine often learns this lesson in silence. You can build a new life while secretly grieving the old one. Not just grieving a person, grieving who you were, who you could have been, and the future that once existed in your heart. That's why the success feels heavy, why the new faces never quite fit, why every sunrise somehow carries the weight of a sunset. Because some losses don't come with graves, no ceremony, no final goodbye, only an invisible mourning that follows him everywhere. And perhaps the hardest truth of all, a man can change his world completely while his soul is still waiting at a door that never reopened. The strangest thing about certain connections is this: they end on paper, but never inside the soul. He left, the messages stopped, the distance grew. Life moved forward, at least on the surface. Because there are bonds that don't behave like ordinary relationships. They don't disappear with time. They don't obey logic. And no matter how far he travels, something keeps pulling at an invisible thread. Science has its own language for this. Neural pathways, emotional imprinting, the way the brain stores attachment long after people are gone. Spirit calls it something else. Energy, soul ties, a connection that exists beyond physical presence. Different words, the same mystery. Because some people leave your life, yet remain wired into your inner world. That's why random memories arrive without warning. Why certain songs feel like messages. Why silence sometimes sounds louder than noise. The divine masculine may tell himself he's moved on, but deep down, another truth whispers quietly. You cannot fully leave a place where a piece of you still lives. Perhaps that's why he still feels her in moments no one can see. Not because he failed to let go, but because some connections don't end. They transform into lessons, into echoes, into invisible currents that keep shaping the heart. And maybe the greatest secret of all is this: he was never completely gone. Because a bond carried by both memory and soul doesn't break, it simply changes form. The universe is patient until it isn't. At first it sends whispers, a feeling he can't explain, a dream that lingers too long, a coincidence that happens one too many times. But he ignores them, keeps moving, keeps building, keeps pretending the ache inside him is just another thing to conquer. And then one day, the whispers stop. Because there comes a moment in every divine masculine's journey when life no longer asks, it demands. The distractions lose their power, the success feels empty, the noise of the world suddenly cannot drown out the silence within. This is the dark night of the soul. Not punishment, transformation. The collapse of everything that was built to avoid the truth. And in that darkness, he meets the one person he spent his entire life running from: himself. No audience, no mask, no escape. Just a mirror reflecting every wound, every fear, every unlived truth. This is where many believe they are breaking. but something deeper is happening. Because before a soul can rise, the false self must fall. And so he drops to his knees, not in defeat, in surrender. Because sometimes the universe doesn't destroy a man to end him. It breaks apart the illusion to reveal who he was always meant to become. And in the deepest night of his soul, the first light of awakening quietly begins. The fastest way to break a man is to let him keep running. He thought distance would save him. New habits, new faces, new distractions stitched into a brand new life. For a while, it works. He feels lighter, almost free. But then something shifts, because pain has its own gravity, and no matter how far he moves, it begins to bend him back toward the center, toward truth, toward himself. At first, it's subtle, a memory that hits too hard, a silence that feels too loud, a smile that doesn't reach his eyes anymore. Then it grows. The cracks start showing through success, through relationships, through every attempt at becoming someone new. And suddenly, there's nowhere left to run that doesn't feel like running into himself. This is the final collapse, not of his life, but of his illusions. Everything he built to escape now becomes the very thing he must walk through. And it breaks him. Not to destroy him, but to remove everything he was pretending to be. Because the divine masculine doesn't awaken through comfort. He awakens when running becomes impossible, when denial stops working, when the mask finally falls. And in that breaking, something terrifying happens. He doesn't disappear. He returns. But not as who he was, as who he was always meant to be. Broken, awake, and finally whole in the only way that ever mattered. He ran through cities, faces, and versions of himself, yet nothing ever stayed quiet inside him. Because some connections don't end, they echo through every success, every silence, every moment he pretends to be fine. What looks like freedom from the outside often hides a deeper collapse within. The divine masculine doesn't escape his truth. He eventually collides with it. And when he does, everything false begins to fall away. No more running, no more masks, no more borrowed peace, only surrender. Because the same journey that breaks him is the one that awakens him. And in that final stillness, he doesn't lose himself. He finally meets himself.